Our guest today is the Honorable David Piccini, Ontario's Minister of Labour, Immigration Training and Skills Development. Minister Piccini plays a key role in shaping the province's workforce and immigration policies, areas that are especially important to Ukrainian newcomers and the broader Ukrainian-Canadian community. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
On behalf of our community, I would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to you and the Government of Ontario for supporting the Ukrainian-Canadian community in our province, especially those who have arrived over the past several years, escaping brutal Russian aggression against Ukraine. I know that some support programs are being offered through the Skills Development Fund stream. Could you briefly talk about these programs, as likely many members of our community do not know about them?
Yeah, thank you. First off, thank you very much for having me on. I want to just start by saying, Ukrainian Canadians have a rich history in our country, Canada, of course, from those that settled in the early 19th century up to the newer arrivals today, who are sadly a result of the unjust war and Russian aggression, which, of course, I know Premier Ford, and our government stand with the Ukrainian people. I wish it was under different circumstances. However, those who are here, we welcome with open arms to support. And I'm a big believer, as you said in your intro. My job as Labour Minister is to give everybody a shot to achieve their full potential and to contribute to our economy, to integrate and contribute to our GDP, and to become productive and contributing members of Ontario's rich fabric. And so you mentioned our Skills Development Fund, which is now a $2.5 billion with a B dollar fund that supports a number of important initiatives to train people with better training, better jobs, and bigger paychecks. And of course, new Ukrainian arrivals are eligible for Skills Development Fund programming. I'd first take a step back and say we provide over $100 million annually to support various settlement organizations with Ukrainians. We support language training for newcomers. We support specific initiatives on settlement agencies, and invested over $1 million with the Ukrainian Association to support them as well. We support Skills Development Fund programming that's helped Ukrainians become carpenters. And I'm meeting with our local carpenter group today here in Port Hope at Cafe Lviv, which is run by Ukrainian refugee families here. And we're working to support them. And so, for example, I'm meeting 3 of the carpenters who've been supported through our Skills Development Fund, become fully licensed master carpenters in Canada. And of course, with Red Seal designation, you have the ability to freely work from coast to coast to coast in Canada to support us with Premier Ford's ambitious build agenda, which is $200 billion for hospitals, schools, homes. So, these are just a small example. Udamis is another group that's been supporting Ukrainian newcomers in Toronto and around. But this is just some of the many examples of SDF projects that we've supported Ukrainian recent arrivals.
Just to follow on, does the Government of Ontario plan to continue offering these programs?
Yes, we do. In fact, in the budget, we committed an additional $1 billion to Skills Development Fund, bringing the total to $2.5 billion. Later this month, I'll be announcing a new intake for Skills Development Fund with the Premier, and we look forward to continuing to support the training. And in a world where our economy is so intertwined on a global scale. And we see now President Trump and the tariffs are affecting workers. It's having a real life impact on workers, manufacturing, automotive, steel sector, for example, aluminum, copper. We want to make sure that in Ontario, we're ready to support workers, to protect Ontario, to protect Ontario's workforce. And that means giving everybody, regardless of where you're from, an opportunity to achieve your full potential. So through these rapid training programs, we're helping get people into apprenticeships, for example. We're helping people get into careers in AI. We're helping youth that perhaps have additional barriers to employment get additional training supports. We're paying for the first set of tools. We're getting them transportation coverage to get to the job site to start an apprenticeship. These are just some of the many things we're doing, and these SDF programs are helping us build a resilient workforce, a better trained workforce to help withstand whatever the global economic winds that come our way. We want to make sure we have a resilient workforce. And that's what Skills Development Fund is doing. And I've got to say, I mean, Ukrainians in particular have offered so much. They're incredibly hardworking, have been a delight in a number of the Skills Development Fund programs to get to know many of these newcomers who've come here, you know, fleeing the brutal Russian tyranny. And we want to support folks so that they can achieve their full potential. And as I said, you know, an example is that tradesman or woman who now is helping literally build a stronger Ontario. And I have a grandfather who immigrated here too, who helped build. He worked in the steel sector. So that is the Canadian story. That is the Ontario story. And Ukrainians are an integral part of that fabric.
Minister Piccini, as you may know, many Ukrainian newcomers are highly educated but face barriers to employment in their fields.
Yeah.
What is being done to accelerate credential recognition and access to regulated professions in Ontario?
Yeah, really good question. You know, I'll start up by a story. I mentioned Cafe Lviv here. For those watching, come to Port Hope. It's an incredible restaurant. You know, some of the best Ukrainian food I've ever had. I absolutely love it. And one of the young women who worked there was a doctor. And we need doctors now more than ever. So some of the things we've done in Ontario is we launched what's called Practice Ready Assessment, where if you meet some of the basic criteria, you are eligible to undergo a clinically supervised sort of internship where we assess your competencies and then give you a pathway for credentialing. We've already to date helped hundreds of doctors credential. We've also done it in nursing as well. I have removed Canadian work experience requirements really to force assessment on competency under Employment Standards Act, and are working to make sure we assess people on that competency, not on where they got it, because we need competent people. We've worked with our regulatory bodies as well to instill a mandatory timeline in which they have to assess people from STEM to STERN, we say, from beginning to end. We have a timeline in which to assess people with foreign credentials. Now, that's a work in progress. Many regulatory bodies continue to push back, or they say, of course, we meet the timeline, and then they just don't let people in, which is a way to control. So we're working with those regulatory bodies. I've given our fairness commissioner the ability now to change regulatory body policies if they don't meet reasonable timelines. And we've defined that as a 6-month window in which to assess that competency. And so this is something that we have to do a better job on. I'm sick and tired of going to Cafe Lviv to see a doctor there, or hopping in an Uber to find out that we have an engineer or a construction project manager, you know, someone who spent their life on a job site. We desperately need that now. Now, if it's a question of they need to do a little more education on the building code, or they need to do more to understand our Occupational Health and Safety Act, we can do it, but we just need our regulatory bodies assessing, identifying the gap, and then we have programming to bring people up for licensure. So those are some of the things we're doing in Ontario. We were the first province to remove Canadian work experience requirements, the first to give the Fairness Commissioner the ability to get in and change policies. That's a clear commitment by Premier Ford and our government that we want well-trained people, and we want to give them a pathway to achieve their full potential.
I was wondering, how is the ministry working with Ontario employers to encourage the hiring of Ukrainian immigrants and refugees?
Yeah, I mean, I think first off, you need a healthy worker. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that as of, I believe it was end of 2024, 81,000 Ukrainians have received OHIP coverage and healthcare coverage for our universal, our universal coverage in healthcare, which is a big step. That's a big step and something, our Ministry of Health, Minister Jones, worked exceptionally hard on to ensure we have healthy people here. Working with employers is a good question. And so we've worked with employers through our skills development fund to encourage them to take on apprentices and encourage them through each round of skills development fund. We get with employers and say, what more do you need? So we've incorporated wage subsidies as a component to encourage people to take on perhaps that Ukrainian carpenter I mentioned. We've encouraged that. We've worked on credential recognition with those bodies to support employers on meeting their labor needs for newcomers. Because newcomers don't want to be living off of state assistance. They want to be working. They want to be contributing. It's our job as public policymakers to make sure, without compromising health and safety, that we are getting people to credentials so that they can work in their chosen profession. And so we've been working with those bodies, as I mentioned, but with employers, we've been working with them through our skills development fund. It's the largest employer-driven training initiative that I can remember in modern history in Ontario that is empowering employers to meet their labor market needs. And as I said to you on the outset, we've been supporting a number of organizations tap into that funding or other settlement funding to support Ukrainians in being matched with employers to land a job with a bigger paycheck and a pathway to really achieve their potential.
Many Ukrainian newcomers are coping with trauma from the war. How is the province supporting mental health as part of workplace integration or training programs?
Yeah, good question. So as I mentioned, we've provided OHIP coverage to now over 81,000 Ukrainians who've arrived. We build in our Occupational Health and Safety Act a number of measures to protect workers on the job site. Our roadmap to wellness, which is an over $3 billion commitment to mental health, is for everyone in Ontario to benefit from. So we have youth wellness hubs targeting youth at a young age to make sure they're built with the resiliency and equipped with the skills to navigate these challenges. I recognize the acuities of people coming from war, fleeing war. And so, we work with our settlement agencies to support them, and we're responsive to their needs. So when the war started and we heard from settlement agencies, we're dealing with predominantly women and children who are fleeing, that come with unique traumas. In some cases, they've lost their father who've died. And they're dealing with these traumas, these issues, or they've, escaped. They've been routine to bombings and to all sorts of horrific things you encounter in a war. And so we've been working with the settlement agencies. We increased funding to our settlement agencies to support with some of these acuities of needs that we're seeing. We've launched, as I said, Roadmap to Wellness, the $3 billion commitment, which ties in with these local on-the-ground settlement agencies to support the newcomers and arrivals, getting them access to mental health supports, providing unique mental health supports to students in the education system as well, because that's where they're going. The children are going into our education system. So these are some of the steps we're taking. In communities like mine, we're embedding mental health and clinical experts in with police who are doing routine stops because, sadly for some, these issues drive them to encounters with law and law enforcement. So we want to make sure that we redivert them back into the healthcare system to get the wraparound supports that they need. And again, we're supporting those initiatives as well.
What is your ministry's long-term vision for integrating Ukrainian newcomers into Ontario workforce beyond emergency response, particularly in addressing labor shortages in key sectors like healthcare, construction, and tech?
Yeah, so I mean, my goal here is to make sure we have pathways to fill in-demand labor market needs. As I mentioned to you, we want to mine critical minerals. The war in Ukraine has shown us, and the effect that that had on energy in Europe has shown us the need to be energy sufficient. We can meet all of our energy needs with nuclear power, with hydroelectric, with natural gas, with wind and solar. We don't need to be dependent on other countries. For critical minerals and batteries, we're the only jurisdiction that has all the unique rare earth minerals needed for all of these batteries. So we can do it all in Ontario. But to do it, we're going to need the type of effort we saw when my grandfather emigrated here to nation build. We've got to nation build again. We've got to build pipelines. We've got to mine minerals. We've got to open new mines in the north. We've got to make sure that those mines don't take 15 years to build and open. We have to do it much faster. And so that's going to require a talent pipeline of workers to achieve that. So some of the things we're doing is we've invested in technology and using AI, using tech software, having the ability to predict exactly how many workers we're going to need. So for a nuclear build in my own community in Wesleyville, we're looking at new nuclear. We want to know we need how many pipe fitters, steam fitters, how many carpenters, how many laborers, how many finishing trades men and women do we need, and at what stage of the project do we need them. So we're investing in that. That's going to tell us how many we need. Now we know, as I mentioned to you, through Skills Development Fund, we're giving Ukrainian newcomers the ability to get the skills to contribute to these in-demand sectors like mining, like construction and skilled trades, like healthcare. Through SDF, we've helped train nurses, PSWs, on pre-training programs that get them in to train, to become a nurse, to become a PSW. And as I said, the additional pieces, those who are already doctors, we've got to fast track their training to become fully licensed. So this is, put together, this is driving a workforce that will be responsive to tomorrow's workforce needs so that Ontario can be a superpower in energy, in mining, in critical minerals, and the engine of the Canadian economy. And to do it, we're going to need everyone, all hands on deck. And I think what I'm saying to you and your viewers is through our Skills Development Fund and through steps we're taking to support settlement agencies to fast track credential and recognize foreign credentials, that Ontario is open for business and we're ready to help people achieve their full potential to be the best province in the best country in the world.
Thank you for your time today, Mr. Piccini. I appreciate it and good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity, and all the best to you and all the viewers watching.
Thank you.